So are we ready to start? Do I not see Dima? So, for those of you who, unlike Morten, haven't been here from the very beginning of our festival, perhaps you don't know that abbreviation YARGUS stands for International Annual Russian Guitar Seminar. We were completely committed to have seminars, to have discussions, to just have this, what we're having now. But when, when we had our guests from various parts of the States and a guest from Kyrgyzstan, it just turned out that, we needed money and we didn't have it, so we started this tradition of having concerts. We didn't think about it. But originally, the spirit of Yargus is this, sort of sharing knowledge about the Russian guitar. I felt like I had so much knowledge in 2006 that I wanted to share it. Of course, now I know that I basically knew nothing, but now I think I know something at this point, and also I know that all of you know something that you can tell me. So this is the spirit of Yargus. Congratulations. Thank you for coming. Of course, you didn't have any options. So back in the year 2000, there was a great event, the publication of new Grove Dictionary of Music and Musicians. And for that particular publication, I wrote several articles on the 7-string guitar. And I don't remember this phrase verbatim, but I think what I wrote about the repertoire of this instrument was, and the transcriptions of 6-string guitar music was not a major part of this repertoire. And I think it's still true, but since then I looked at the transcriptions that are available, and I realized that a lot of them actually are very interesting. And I would have written the sentence differently. So what we're going to do today, we're going to look at the original 6-string guitar music by Molino, what's his first name? I already forgot. Francesco Molino and Fernando Sor. And those are pieces that were, published by established Western European guitarists, taken by Russians. For some reason, one thing is that at the beginning and in the middle of the 19th century, Russian guitar was extremely popular, 7-string, and the European guitar of 6 strings, or mainly of 5 strings, was kind of exotic and not really very popular. So perhaps people wanted to adopt this music. So that's what we're going to talk about. Nevertheless, it's interesting that I called it Horseshoeing a Flea. So everybody understands this. Flea is a little insect, and horseshoes are those things that you put on little paws. So this is kind of a summary of this idea. So there is a late 19th century writer, Nikolai Leskov, and here's the story about cross-eyed lefty, meaning that his working hand is left hand. And it's a very lively kind of folksy story about kind of sort of competition between West and East. So showing the anxiousness of Russia to do something better than the West. So according to this story, during the reign of Alexander I, the superior English smiths, blacksmiths, provided this incredible toy, an incredible mechanical flea that with a miniature key you could wind, and it would perform some dances and so on. And it was amazing and everything was great, because that was the time when Russia turned to the West and felt like it was part of Europe. And then under the next Tsar, it was kind of, for the most part, forgotten and was somewhere on the shelf. And then under the Nicholas I, when Russia became kind of a more aggressive superpower, they revived this thing, and the Tsar gave it, the flea, to the Cossack who was supposed to do something to it. They were supposed to show the English metal workers that they're not quite as good as they think. And so in Russia, there's a place called Tula. That's where Sergei Rudnev is from. And that's where they traditionally make samovars and guns. So that's where the metal workers live. And so they sent this little thing there, and they said, do something with it. And the guy who was supposed to be the best worker, he was somewhat asymmetrical in his eyes, cross-eyed actually, and he had only one working, I mean, his left hand was the working one, and he did something with it for 3 days, and then when they showed it to this Cossack who was responsible, said like, you broke it, it doesn't dance anymore. And so they brought it to the Tsar, but the Cossack was furious, and basically it was smelling like a scandal. But there they demanded the strongest microscope, and there they were able to see that now that's a different flea, and on every paw, if the flea has paws, it has a shoe, a horseshoe. And then turns out that those, amazing makers were able even to put initials on every horseshoe, and then they claim that on every nail there's also an initial. So the problem is that this flea stopped dancing. So that is a kind of working metaphor for this presentation, suggesting that when a Western artifact, in this case a piece of 6-string music, is adapted for the Russian culture, for the use in Russian culture, in our case for the 7-string guitar, it's not enough just to verbatim transcribe the notes. For example, transpose a piece a tone lower. It would make sense, because we have our working, the most delightful key is G major, because that's the open strings. So usually you can have a piece, European piece in A major, and you put it down to G major, and everything will be working beautifully. You can still play it in A major, but it will be kind of awkward. That's very brutal. But what we're going to see today, that there were a lot more interesting things. And so the first case in point is the piece by Francesco Molino. That is a very simple rondo, but I have a manuscript that has these beautiful words on the top, "не выдается," like not to give to people. So that's a kind of state secret. It comes from the State Archive of Russia, Russian State Archive of Literature and Arts in Moscow. And indeed, they won't give it to you, but I got it somehow anyway. It says, divertissement by Molino. And we know that it's Sychra's hand, Andrei Sychra, the founder of our tradition. So, if you try to establish, to find out who, find the original, by this introduction you won't, because the introduction is entirely written by Sychra. Recently, I had this music for a long time, and since I was interested in the Russian music, I never really looked at it. And then I started looking at it, and I found out that there was a Molino specialist who wrote a book about Francesco Molino, who lives somewhere in Holland, and whose name is Burger. Anybody know that? So I asked him, and he immediately identified this rondo, but he said this is a puzzling moment. So this is kind of a real piece of music. This introduction, it's a full page. In the original it's a very small rondo. So I would like Stefan now to play it for us, because that's the first thing that we will see. So obviously, if you're writing composition, you're adding something to the piece, you want to show your heavy artillery, you want to show the best tricks that work. So the first thing, you can see those wavy lines. And interestingly enough, on the Russian guitar, in the Russian guitar tradition, this notation stands for, Morten?
Harmonics.
Exactly. But how can you play those harmonics?
They must be artificial.
They must be artificial harmonics, and therefore it must have been after 1819, because in 1819, Semyon Aksyonov published his discovery that he found out how to play artificial harmonics. His technique was a little different from what we use today. He put the index finger to touch the string and thumb to actually pluck the strings. Is that how you do it? Exactly. So this way you can play, any note can become a harmonic. And so that's the heavy artillery right here, showing, look what I know, look what I can do. They really believe that it will change the world. The other piece of heavy artillery is this notation there, the fourth line from the top the last measure. Could you play just those, the campanella? Yeah, so this is fingering that only popular in the Russian guitar. When you see those ratios like 3/7 or 2/6, in Russian brilliant way, it is third finger on the 7th fret. And 0 means 0, open string. 2/6 means second finger on the 6th fret. And this way, it's actually quite quick, the writing. And so here, it's almost like tablature. That's how you play those pieces. So what other special things should I mention, Stefan? Any?
Something more.
Well, is there anything I didn't mention?
This arrow, maybe.
The arrows. Where?
Arrows.
Oh yeah, like the arrow right there, like the arrow pointing up. Yeah, or for example, easier to point out this one. This is left-hand thumb. That's on the 7-string guitar. It's extremely common. That's used all the time. All right. Well, let's listen to that. Thank you. So you're going to hear this piece in its entirety at the moment, and Morten, please do that for us. Yeah, just play the whole thing if it's okay. And you will see that the original ronda doesn't quite rhyme with this dramatic introduction. You're waiting for something really substantial after this. But the ronda actually is a very little, elegant, naive piece, not particularly impressive. Well, impressive, very impressive. In Morten's rendition, it will be fabulous. Hours of work went into it. So don't go. So thank you very much. So this piece, as you can see, it occupies only one page, and the introduction was also one page. Well, when I listen to this music, I always think about the fact that Rossini wrote like 40 operas or something like that, and Glinka wrote only 2. And you wonder, why is that? And this is like a well-oiled machine. You know exactly how to end the piece. You have a plan right away. If you're playing this, 6-string guitar, in G major, it means that somewhere there's E minor waiting for you very naturally. Has the open string. And Russian music, in general, tends to be a lot more anxious, and they're kind of inventing the bicycle every time they need to ride it. They have to build it from scratch. So, Stefan, may I ask you to... you don't go anywhere. Yeah, you stay here. Yes. So, that thing, the general comment about, about composition and about form and about the fact that this music is very predictable because it's just like sonata forms, it consists of well-received, well-known cliches. The other thing is the texture, and that's, for our kind of purposes, a lot more interesting. So the working hypothesis is that the Russian guitar differs from the Western guitar in such a way that the well-known, the 6-string guitar is very much, its technique is based on the alternating the fingers of the right hand in such a way that you actually can create passages. But this way you have them very well articulated. Every note is articulated in the right hand, almost every note. Sometimes you have slurs. But you don't try to muddle it and to make it kind of harp-like. And that's exactly what Sychra is trying. And Sychra actually is a guy who, was a harpist for half of his life, and then he started playing guitar. So he wanted to, you understand what the difference is. You just create some sort of shape, and then you kind of pluck it gently with your right hand, and it sounds like a harp, like campanelas. So if you don't mind, let's just play it like that. You play the beginning, the first, A of the theme, and then we hear Stefan play the same thing. Stop you right here. So, can you play, Stefan? Can you play with this slowly? Yeah. So you hear what it is, right? You start with playing this G. I mean, you have an open string for that, but you actually put you play it on the stop string, and then you have an A on the third string, and then you have the B on the open string. And just from the very beginning, you have this gentle kind of strumming of the harp that's completely absent in the very dry Western origin. Piece where there's one slur and that's it. I mean, in the first little thing. All right, can we hear it to the whole theme? Yeah. Thank you. So that's quite interesting. Yeah, you hear some difference, and I think you can exaggerate this difference, and could be even more sonorous. I mean, everything in the Russian repertoire wants to be connected, and sometimes there are those moments when the Sychra wants this effect when you have disconnected kind of pizzicato thing, and what's it called? Son étouffe or something. Étouffé. Okay, very good. So he explains to us what to do. You just after in the right hand, you take a chord and you stop it. So
like this.
Well, maybe. I mean, usually, I think you're just supposed to touch the string right after you produce the sound. I mean, I don't think he puts.
Like, if I may.
But story.
Yeah.
Show this from.
Yeah, that's
I had in the Sychra study. So you play a chord and stop it
mhm. Yeah,
immediately.
sorry,
That's
that's wrong. Yeah, so that's very unusual. That's a very kind of contrasting kind of technique. That happens very rarely. Usually you expect it to be connected. So another point, there is a moment of a little cadenza. Morten, can you remind us what it sounded like?
Yeah. Once again.
So everybody who plays six-string guitar can see this little zero there, and it's the open top string. So you have, in this whole passage, you have one slur, and every note is articulated, and then you, through the first string, you kind of change position. That's just extremely common. And what does this passage sound like? So you can actually imagine Vadik play it, right? It's like extremely dramatic for the Russian guitar. You do the same thing through the open string D, right? But you don't have this situation when you actually play the same string with the same finger. It's always kind of harp-like thing. Can you play it one more time and just maybe slower, but make sure that it's really sonor? Yeah. Okay. What do we have next? So as I mentioned earlier, you know, what Molino invites us to experience is the modulation to the relative minor, E minor. Morten, would you be so kind to play that for us? You know, when we get to E minor.
Yeah, from them.
Right.
Could I borrow that again?
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Okay, that's great. Great interrupted cadence. What should Sychra do with it? You need a pedal note on the top, which is E, which is six-string guitar's top note. But you simply don't have it. Just let's face it, we don't have the string. So what is there to do? So what does he do? Well, instead he goes to a different key. So he completely rewrites this episode, and instead of going to E minor, he goes to the parallel minor, G minor. So now let's listen to that. Would you return your footstool?
Oh. Should have two.
I know, yeah, that was kind of
Okay. Okay. Sorry.
yeah, very dramatic,
Much
isn't
more
it?
interesting.
Much more interesting. Like we are, you know, there are a lot of little details that you rarely find in published, Western music. For example, all of a sudden you have unison here. I mean, it's not absolutely necessary. I'm sure that it could be a unison. And then let's just look towards the very end. Basically, it's again when I was thinking about Rossini, it has the Molina version is a very predictable kind of end. I mean, nice, it's always pleasant to experience something we expect. In that sense, very nice. Morten, can you finish it for?
From the repeat of the theme and then
Right.
Oh.
nice, dramatic. So let's just listen to what Sychra made out of it.
Where? From where?
Well, basically somewhere towards the end.
Okay, okay.
You have lost.
Sorry, you want
That's okay. That's good. That's good. So, I mean, there's a lot more inventiveness that goes here. Those are nice passages that combine slurred notes with harp-like notes and so on. So this is this is much more unique in a way. Like you don't get this sort of bulk feeling, like, oh, I heard this before. So to sum up with the Molino piece. It feels that Andrei Sychra, who was making this arrangement, he felt that it's something serious, that it's his duty to make it, to basically put those shoes on horseshoes on a flea, to make it better, to improve it so much. The question is whether the flea can jump, whether the flea can dance. That we don't know. There is certain robust quality of Western music that it's really going to work. I mean, what we're trying to do in this seminar is to revive the holy tradition of playing, this very airy, very relaxed Russian guitar that basically nobody in Russia plays. So everybody in Russia who plays 7-string guitar, he plays it exactly in this robust way, kind of articulating the same way, and not really knowing that there is completely different approach to the instrument. So, any questions about Molino so far? Everybody's happy? Now let's move to Fernando Sor. Who is playing what? Oh, yeah, that's right. It's just you and you. Marco, do you also need...
You can. There's a music stand. You can.
But do you need a music stand? No.
No, yeah, it's playing
don't.
without music stand.
Thank you, Stefan. Yeah, we can actually do the contrasting way and start from the arrangement. If you look at it right away, you can see those harp-like passages that Sychra liked so much. You can see ornaments on adjacent strings. You can see slides. There is no special sign for a slide. There is no special. I mean, basically, a slide and a slur, a simple ascending legato, it's the same sign. So you not always know how to play it. But when you have a note without any slur connecting, then you know that it's that's played separately or on different strings. All right. So, Marco, could you play the theme for us?
Yes. Sorry.
Can you go on?
Yes.
Excellent. This is really, really pretty. when I listen to that, I think to myself, the Flea can dance.
Oh, thank you. That's the best compliment.
Shall I play it?
Yeah. Beautiful. So is it just me, but I hear it much drier? You know, like a lot of nice things. How would you describe the difference between those two sounds? I mean, we are not here to say that, okay, Russian guitar is better, you know, these are...
Yes, we are.
Well, we can be analytical. What is the difference? Why is it? Well, one thing I notice is that just in terms of information and imperatives, this one gives you a lot more stuff to work with. I don't see single fingering in the Sor. And the reason for that is that you know, there are not that many possibilities. You know, here you have the intervals on the average are smaller. You know, that you can play the same note in the same sort of area. But there is more to that. Like, for example, in the beginning of the second line, the slur, you can see that it's not really a kind of descriptive slur, because the last note D cannot be played on the same string. So it sort of generally tells you to play connectedly. But it doesn't tell you something like this or something like this, which is completely, you know, completely exhaustive description, what you're going to do. I mean, here you can see a little of thought process. You know, he first wanted to slur this, all of them, it didn't quite work, so he just played this. I mean, that's, you know, it's much, much richer when it's adapted to the 7-string guitar. That's, but I mean, of course, it's beautiful music, blah, 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 but, you know, if we were casting votes, I mean, I would vote for this. Okay, let's move on. So this is called variation 1. So Morten will play it for us, and Marcus should think, sort in his head where he plays that. I mean, the numeration is different. It's not.
I had some printing problems here. I hope I'm missing one line, but
Oh, you can improvise.
yeah, I think I figured out what it should be.
Good. You have something like that, Marco?
Yes. And this variation is not so many dramatic
Yeah, it's
changes,
That's,
less than in other variations.
that's what I thought too, yeah. So,
Sorry.
So here is almost exactly the same, apart from the cadence. It's harmonized different.
yes. Yeah, not that different. Still very pretty. I mean, there's also something about the instrument's overtones and the fact that, you know, we're in C major, and so we have this G major dominant, and I'm like, the fact that you have so many strings that fit G major kind of makes it very sonorous. That's what we saw.
Yeah, that's what I played.
And it would be tempting to put, to play the low D sometimes, but he didn't really do it.
Yes, he's here.
Oh, here, right, yes. Yeah, so it's another opportunity for drama right there. But yeah, you're right, this one is not super different. And?
Can I play it?
Yes, go ahead. Please. So we skip variation 2 in the original, and this is almost, the idea is very similar to the famous Mozart variations.
Exactly.
The same.
Okay.
Yes.
Something like that.
Oh.
Is this my version? Yeah.
Yeah, of course, those nice harp-like passages. I mean, there is some kind of airiness in this guitar that just really kind of pleasantly touches your ears, doesn't it? Oh, what else? What else do I not see? Well, I mean, it's interesting that in Sor, in the first measure, you have a slur over the notes that, technically speaking, cannot be slurred. So it's not a technical slur. So for a Western player who is used to playing, articulating everything, you have to say, play these 30-second notes kind of connected, as if not. Right, which is kind of, you don't need to tell a Russian player because they kind of play connectedly everything. Okay.
Interesting place is the interesting thing is that there are two versions of Sychra. Is it you know better? Maybe which one is before?
I don't.
No, you don't know. But this place, second bar in the second line, this it's written here like, but in this other version it's more rhythmical. Da, ta, 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 ta. But here it's like ta, 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 ta.
Yeah.
So also Sychra varies the rhythm from one version to another.
There's also some interesting polyphonic things.
Yes, yes, yes.
Like that
Like that.
moment.
Yeah, this opposite movement.
You're right, very, very true. And of course, like this is something that you rarely see in Western music when your slurs or ties fall on the downbeat. Like you don't have, even the downbeat is not articulated. All right, well, that's very nice. And another variation.
Yeah, here's the same problem with one line missing. So I'm guessing a little bit, but I don't see.
Nice bravura variation. Notice that in, so to speak, Marco's version, there is no there is a pickup that is absent in Sor. So Sor, for a change, decided to go right on the downbeat, but not Sychra.
And in the other version of Sychra, there are rests. It's not legato, but it's written rest like. So.
Yes, thank you very much. Again, lots of information how to play things in connected way. Lots of really nice ornaments on adjacent strings. I mean, just a combination of this figure. I mean, I would put, if I was working on Yargos sort of. I mean, we have some kind of logo, but to have a banner, I would put this as the triumph of the 7-string guitar. Like when you have an ornament on adjacent strings, and then you pull off to the lower string. I mean, yeah, that one. I think it's very, very typical. Okay, so I think that's all I have to say or illustrate about. But there is one point that Morten told me yesterday, and I think I noticed it too, that actually there is an extra variation in Sychra that is in parallel minor. So that's why in the previous variation we saw the word maggiore, because there was a minor variation. So that one is not in Sor version. So, and it's entirely Sychra, and I just let.
That was beautiful one.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for, perhaps somebody will have some questions. But let me just tell you, to conclude, that, I'm extremely pleased that we have topic Scandinavia this year, because I see a lot of friends, old and new, and because we had Scandinavia present from the very beginning, uninterruptedly pretty much. But, and here is an interesting, next theme for Yargos 2020 will be Czech and Slovak. And the reason for that is because I was able to acquire an original Sychra manuscript by Sychra. In Moscow, I just bought it for $160 American. And it has 42 pages of music that nobody has seen before. So since you are my closest friends, of course, I will show it to you. But what's interesting, it's not music by Sychra, it's music by Antoine Loyer, arranged for violin and six-string guitar, and it's seven-string guitar, and it's extremely interesting. I mean, you see all of those. I mean, I'm not sure that he wrote a single extra measure. I mean, I so far haven't studied it enough. But I can see that all of the Sychra apparatus, all of his apparatus, resources of enrichment and making it more interesting, all of it is there. Loyer was an excellent composer, excellent guitarist, but he wrote for five-string guitar, so he didn't even have the bass E. Sychra makes textures so much more interesting that you will be amazed. So thank you, everybody.
I'm looking forward.
Questions?
Great.
Thank you. I mean, I'm sorry I put you on the spot, but it's very intimate.
Yeah.
Wolf?
Just to practice, what was the purpose with the thumb as opposed to the barrel?
Well, we have sort of arguments here, and the tendency is that people with longer fingers advocate the thumb, and people whose fingers are short don't see the reason to use it anyway.
Because if you write a piece, you will write it differently if you have the barrel or if you use the thumb.
Well, I think that people in the middle, up to the end of the 19th century, they had a different understanding of guitar technique. And so the idea of building this whole technique on barré is old. You know, it comes from the lute repertoire. There's also lots of that, you know. And it sort of really works very well in this tuning in fourths. But for the Russian guitar, people were trying to avoid it at all costs. So the only bar that you find there, and it's not like they didn't know how to do it, but you only mainly find it when you need that very chord. You just put finger across all the strings, and that's the chord you need. Otherwise, you know, in the very early methods, they described a technique which is called the ring, which is a way to play a bar, but you kind of stop it here and here for some reason. So you can.
Popular music is doing.
What?
Lots of popular guitar music.
Oh, yeah,
they do that.
They do, right. So, I mean, the thing is that the classical guitarists kind of faint when they see it. Like Matanya Ofi, good memory, thought that the reason why Russian guitar didn't pick up is because John Schneiderman and I play with our thumbs and everybody's repelled and just don't want to come near us. But I think there are much more profound reasons why the guitar is still where it is.
Could I elaborate also? Because I think it's interesting also because Scott is going to have a seminar about the similarities, am I right, between the Viennese tradition of guitar making and the Russian tradition of guitar making, which is very similar. They are very similar. So basically the Russian guitar making tradition was more or less based on the Viennese guitar. And that's why it's interesting that also the Viennese guitarists, they also play with the thumb. So so it's not only the guitars are similar to the Viennese, but the Viennese technique also came to Russia. But I think the Russians used it more. They used it more. But
Well, I think the chronology is somewhat different here. I mean, the early guitars in Russia, they were not just based on the early European guitars, but they were actually often just rebuilt European guitars. And at that time, I'm not aware of a big presence of Viennese guitars. I think when we're talking like 1820s, I think we mainly had French guitars by Lacotte school. And
Russia?
yeah.
Okay.
And I mean, for example, Scott in his workshop has my guitar that I recently bought, which is a guitar by Lacotte, Russified, so with a Russian neck and so on. So, but you are completely right that later Viennese tradition kind of became very popular. So people actually could, order guitars from Stauffer and Scherzer. That's also true. But it also kind of reflects this interesting dynamic relationship between Russia and the West, that we are trying to produce something that will impress the West, but at the end we borrow something else from the West, and so it comes to Russia, steeps in Russia's national juices, then comes back to the West.
Yeah, because it's also the neck. All the Russian guitars are screwed on, and you can remove it. And that's an invention in Vienna by Stauffer.
Well, that's a question that he invented or
he had the patent.
Well, yeah.
The technique of the thumb over, though, I mean, it's writing that the popular musicians is the actual transition or tradition, carrying on of the tradition of that.
It's
Popular music, you see it in rock and roll and folk music and so on. It's the classical players that abandoned that. And it carried Monzani and a few of the Italian players continued that on, including Mangori, the South American. He continued that, but you don't really ever see it very often because he got in this conflict with Segovia. Segovia, that was just like...
Oh, Sibelius, he played with...
Yeah, there are some pieces, manuscripts I've seen where he actually notates the thumb. So it's I think the classical guitar or the nylon gut string guitar abandoning the thumb over happened basically it's the 20th century.
Because the Spanish, it's the same. Also, there's connection with the guitar making because
Right.
the Viennese guitar was also more or less the base of the American guitar because Martin, who kind of created the American guitar tradition, he was a student of Stauffer. So, but then, of course, the Spanish tradition won with the Torres guitar, and also the Spanish technique won in the Western Europe. So, many interesting subjects.
Yeah, very much. Yeah, thank you so much again. And Dima, Misha is alive somewhere?
I don't know where he is.
Basically, tonight concert, everybody's coming. Bring balalaika and the music if you need.
Can I play
it.
some?
Play the thumb. On the balalaika, nobody ever questions the thumb. So yeah, and I think also just in terms of overtones, in order to reach this ethereal kind of effect, it's nice when all of your strings are ringing. The moment you put a bar across all the strings, you move towards this dry direction. So I'm trying to influence my friends to use their thumbs, but you know.
You succeeded.
So far, you
That's why we have opposing thumbs.
I
We're unique
did it.
monkeys. Let's use the opposing thumbs.
You did it.
monkeys, yes.
We're unique monkeys.
Maestro. Thank you, everybody. I'm sorry I put you on the spot. I know it's hard to play for experts, but like ourselves.
Thank you. That was very. Thank you.